Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self.
In this episode, I have Maryon Stewart with me. Maryon is the author of many books, including Manage Your Menopause Naturally, The 6-Week Guide to Calming Hot Flashes and Night Sweats, Getting Your Sex Drive Back, Sharpening Memory, and Reclaiming Well-Being, and she's published 27 other self-help books. As a world-renowned health expert, she has helped tens of thousands of women around the world overcome PMS and menopause symptoms without the use of drugs or hormones. Her approach offers a simple, science-based, workable, and enjoyable way of alleviating symptoms during perimenopause, and beyond. Welcome to the show, Maryon.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in women's health and menopause specifically?
Whoa, yes. It was a long time ago. I was actually on maternity leave after our second baby, and my ex-husband at the time, he was a doctor, and he was working with 3 other doctors setting up, and I was living in England at the time, so the British Society for Nutritional Medicine. And this was really at the very beginning of natural medicine when it wasn't very commonplace. And they gathered together 10,000 medical papers on different subjects. And because I was looking after 2 babies under 2, they decided I didn't have much to do. So they gave me the 10,000 papers to sort into different conditions. And I found 200 of them on PMS, on the non-drug approach to PMS. So I set up a PMS program based on those for my husband's clinic. And we trained his nurse. And they started to deliver a PMS program. And a local journalist came to as a patient and heard about it and wrote about it. And before we knew it, it was kind of all over the media. And we were literally helping tens of thousands of women to overcome their PMS. And in fact, within the space of a year or two, 94% of the women were symptom-free within 4 months. And it was just so stunning. We couldn't work out why it had such a profound effect. And so we kind of tracked back. We did lab tests on different populations. So we have 5 separate studies that were published looking at nutrient levels, because we couldn't understand why these women were getting better. And then we discovered that very often women had low levels of nutrients, things like magnesium, B vitamins, zinc, essential fatty acids, and so on, that was affecting their brain chemistry and their hormone function. And when we corrected that and helped them to have a better lifestyle and diet, they just overcame their symptoms and went back to, in fact, the biggest complaint we ever had was that they didn't know when their periods were coming because they didn't have any symptoms leading up to them. And then no period pains either, because we fixed that. And that carried on for years and years until we started to get publications about the non-drug approach to menopause. And so then at that point in the 1990s, we tweaked the PMS program, turned it into a menopause program as well, so that we can help women going through menopause, because there's such a disconnect between the published science and the evidence to show that you can help yourself to overcome your symptoms and also extend your well-being years in the long term, between that and the level of knowledge that most doctors have. The Mayo Clinic survey, for example, showed that only 7% of doctors and gynecologists in the US feel adequately educated to help women going through menopause, which is really shocking.
Mm-hmm. That's sad. You mentioned nutrient deficiencies and how nutrition had a big impact on these women. How does someone detect and start to correct nutrient deficiencies?
Well, it's not that easy. well, I suppose like anything in life, it's easy when you know how. But the point is, we're, as baby girls, we're born with millions of eggs and no roadmap. So no one teaches us about anything to do with our hormones, except maybe our mums tell us about our periods, and then that's about it. And we're just left to fend for ourselves. And it's tricky. Now, Mother Nature, in her wisdom, does give us signs and symptoms of nutrient deficiency. So, for example, if you've got cracking at the corner of your mouth, or you've got dry or greasy skin, or spots, or red patches on your tongue, and ulcers in your mouth, and little pimples on your upper arms and thighs, or your hair is split and brittle and falling out, and your nails are thin and cracking and breaking or ridgy, all of those things mean something in terms of nutrient levels. And so once we learn what that means and how to correct the nutritional deficiencies, we can not only get back to feeling better, but also looking better as well, because it has a really good effect on our skin, hair, and nails, and as well as our energy levels and our general well-being.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the more common deficiencies that you've seen that are related to throwing women's hormones off?
Well, in our studies, we found that magnesium was the most common deficiency, and up to 80% of women had low levels of magnesium. And you don't store magnesium in your body. It's necessary for normal hormone function, normal brain chemistry, smooth muscle control. The gut's a smooth muscle. If you get leg cramps at night, that kind of thing will tell you that you're short of magnesium. If you feel slightly nauseous, disoriented, can't sleep very well, all of those things are related to magnesium, although there's no physical signs. And then other nutrients like essential fatty acids. I mean, there are so many things like vitamin D and calcium and so on, but we did a study on 1,200 women looking at levels of essential fatty acids, and we found that the ones that had low levels had low energy, they were achy, they had brain fog, and they had low libido. So when you've got better levels, you just feel more like your old self, or even better, because we go downhill so slowly. We don't realize how far down we've gone until we bounce back up again. So it's really important to look at all the nutrient levels, and it depends on each individual woman. So some women go through perimenopause, those 8 years leading up to menopause, and they have terribly heavy periods. Well, they're likely to be short of iron. And if you're short of iron, you can get mouth sores and recurrent infections and cracking at the corner of your mouth and brain fog and all sorts of things. So, it's really important to learn to meet your needs across the board.
Okay. Let's move into more about menopause. What are typical symptoms that a woman needs to look out for?
When you get to perimenopause, it's confusing because a lot of symptoms come, not necessarily hot flushes and night sweats, the conventional symptoms that you associate with menopause, but symptoms can come and you don't really realize it has anything to do with your changing hormones. So, for example, Julie, who works in my team, when I met her, she was in her late 40s and she hadn't slept for more than 2 hours at a stretch for 2 years. And she just thought it was part of the aging process because her mother and grandmother used to take sleeping pills as they get older. And she also had brain fog. So she had to check all her work all the time and make lists of things that she didn't have to do before. And she was also achy. Her joints were achy. So she couldn't do any really big sport or activity or anything like that. She just thought it was part of the aging process. But when she came on my program, as she inevitably did, because she is in charge of helping other women on the program in a customer journey sense, she, even within the space of 4 weeks, she got back to sleeping peacefully all night. And she was so stunned. By 6 weeks, at the end of the course, her brain fog had gone. She didn't have any joint pain. And now she's boxing and doing all sorts of exercise that she couldn't dream of doing before. So those are the kind of things that creep up on you in those years leading up to menopause. So perimenopause is reckoned to be the 8 years leading up to menopause. Menopause is one day, it's the age of 51 on average. And so you're likely to go into perimenopause in your early 40s. And then you hit menopause. And that one day is a life change because the following day, it's the anniversary of your last period. And the following day, you're postmenopausal for the rest of your life. Now, 100 years or so ago, it didn't matter much because we weren't living much past 50. But now when 40 something represents halfway for so many of us, it is important, because not only do we need to learn to overcome our symptoms and feel well, but we also need to protect ourselves, because after menopause, we are much more predisposed to things like osteoporosis, the bone thinning disease, heart disease, and dementia. And we can prevent all of those things if we know how to. The research shows that you can prevent all those things. But again, there's a disconnect, and the doctors are not particularly educated.
Mm-hmm. What are the underlying causes of all of those menopausal symptoms themselves?
Well, you've got two main things going on. You've got the first thing is, as I said, the research now shows that billions of women have got nutritional deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first thing. It's like you feel like you're on in economy mode. You're like a bucket with a hole in it. And no matter what you do, unless you correct those deficiencies, you're not going to feel well. You feel empty. So that's the first thing. And that affects your brain chemistry and your hormone function. And then in addition to that, you've got the fact that your ovaries are retiring or have retired by the time you get to menopause. And so you've got empty receptor sites within the cells. If you imagine each cell is like a ball with a little space for a key and a lock. And during your menstruating years, you've got estradiol, the estrogen circulating around your system, popping into those spaces and sealing them off. Well, when you've got no estradiol anymore, because your ovaries have retired, you have empty receptor sites. And it's really important to fill those with wholesome, naturally occurring estrogen. Otherwise, you're an environmental sitting duck as well, because the horrible, harmful environmental estrogens, the xenoestrogens, can jump into that space and cause havoc in your body, including increasing the risk of breast cancer. So it's really important to learn to meet your needs. It's not just a nice idea.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about those natural estrogens?
Yeah, sure. So Mother Nature gives us this gift, and they occur in food. You need to get probably about 100 milligrams of what we call isoflavones, the naturally occurring estrogen, a day, little and often, because the receptor sites in the cells don't stay full for very long. So foods that contain them are flax seeds, golden flax seeds, which you can get whole or ground, and you can sprinkle those on your food, any meal. And soy is another good one. Obviously, organic soy that hasn't been genetically modified is what we go for. And then there are other foods to lesser extents, and supplements that contain a standardized amount of red clover that have been shown to be in clinical trials. They contain different kinds of isoflavones. You've got a whole different variety. So soy has 2, the red clover contains 4 different kinds, and the flax seeds contain another one called lignans, which are different again. So we try and get a variety of those throughout the day and the evening, so that people can literally fool their brain into thinking they've got normal circulating hormone levels again. And so instead of the brain trying to kickstart your ovaries back into function and give you these thermal surges that you know as hot flushes and night sweats, then you can switch all that off. And the aches and pains go, and the insomnia and the anxiety and the panic attacks and all those awful symptoms that make you feel old before your time disappear, and you feel well again.
Mm-hmm. What about progesterone? What role does that play in this? And does that need to be replaced in some fashion?
Yeah, a lot of the foods that contain estrogen also contain small amounts of progesterone as well. And some of the supplements that we use, which have been through properly conducted clinical trials, normalize the hormone producing glands in the body. So it addresses all levels of all the hormones in the body. So it has, by the time someone's finished a 6-week program, which is outlined in my book, Manage Your Menopause Naturally, my latest book, which is actually my first American book, then those most nutrient levels are being corrected, although it can take up to 11 weeks to correct your nutrient levels, and the hormone levels are balancing. The 6-week program that we run is based on a 5-month program that I ran for 20 years in my clinic. And it came about because I made some films for Facebook a few years ago, and I didn't realize they were really basic films about menopause that I put into Facebook, and within a space of 12 weeks, over 1 million women saw those films, And so I was kind of inundated with suffering. So we took our 5-month program and split it into 6 bite-sized modules and took all the science, and so that we could teach women what the science shows that will help you to manage your symptoms and get back in the driving seat in terms of well-being.
That's amazing. You mentioned xenoestrogens as well, which I think is a really important topic. And I think it's getting worse, honestly, as the years go on. What is a xenoestrogen, and where are some of the most common places, or even maybe some hidden sources that people aren't thinking of?
Yep. So they come in the environment predominantly. So you've got pesticides, pollution, toxic waste, plastic, that kind of thing. But also they're in most household products and a lot of the things that we use in our homes. So you have to kind of really rethink a lot of your cleaning products, and over time replace them with the more natural ones. And as long as, if there was a race between Mother Nature's estrogen, HRT, the hormone replacement therapy, and the xenoestrogens, the environmental estrogens, Mother Nature's estrogen wins, jumps into the receptor site, seals off the space, and nothing harmful can get in, which is why I encourage people to learn about phytoestrogens and how to consume them, because they're protecting themselves in the long term. And we know that in Asian communities where they've consumed these kind of foods for a long time, like centuries, they have half the incidence of estrogen-dependent cancer, half the incidence of heart disease, osteoporosis, and dementia. So it really, and even diabetes. So it has a profound effect on our well-being.
Okay. You mentioned your book, Manage Your Menopause Naturally, which offers a 6-week guide to calming hot flashes and night sweats and helping women get rid of their symptoms. And so could you share a couple of key strategies or tips that someone could implement into their daily lives to manage those symptoms?
Yes, of course. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more information than I can give in the space of this interview, but there are key things that you need to do. So our program, for example, is broken into 5 main parts. The first one is correcting nutritional deficiencies that we've talked about. So making sure that you've got wholesome food regularly throughout the day, you don't skip meals, making sure that you're not having loads of caffeine, which will trigger hot flushes and night sweats and anxiety and insomnia. So having decaffeinated or better still herbal varieties, because even in decaffeinated, you've got a little bit of caffeine. Then making sure that you've got the phytoestrogens, so you're consuming some at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you've got that will keep the receptor sites full as you go through the day. Then the next part is taking some science-based supplements. So those are supplements that have been through properly conducted clinical trials and been shown to be safe and effective, and you can choose those according to your symptom set. And then next is relaxation. So doing a formal session of relaxation, like the relaxation you do at the end of a yoga session or a meditation or a guided meditation, for at least 20 minutes a day. And the research shows you can reduce your hot flushes and night sweats by between 50 to 60%, which is really significant. And then finally doing some exercise. And it doesn't have to be running a marathon. It could just be getting out the chair and dancing to your favorite music, getting a hula hoop, going for a walk in nature, whatever you fancy doing that lights you up, and preferably to your favorite music so you can sing and dance at the same time. And that helps to release those lovely feel-good hormones. And it also helps to speed up your metabolism, because very often we're putting weight on, especially around the middle, especially if we've got high cortisol, the stress hormone. And goodness knows there's enough stress going on in the world at the moment. So, stressful things to think about. So we need to be calming our system and nurturing ourselves at this stage in our lives so that we can actually get back to feeling like the best version of ourselves.
I love those tips. And I think it's important for people to hear that even if you're not a woman going through menopause, most of the things that Maryon just said are very important for all of us on a daily basis. Dancing, having fun, like up leveling our own dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all those great hormones, and also reducing our stress. And, we say it on this podcast so much, and I hope by now people get the get the hint that they need to be doing a little bit of this in their everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, because having had high cortisol levels myself, I ran a foundation in memory of my daughter for 6 years, and it was a very rough journey. And my cortisol levels were off the chart. And so I worked with my own doctor. Actually, we gathered all the medical research that shows how you can bring down cortisol and get back to feeling well again. And basically, you just have to do the things that make your heart sing and say no to the things that make your heart sink. So that's the kind of, in a nutshell. So I get my patients to make lists of things that make them smile, things that light them up, things that they feel make them feel good, and things that make them feel bad, and just say yes to the things that make them feel great, and learn to say no to some of the things, or delegate, or whatever it is, so that you can stand a chance of getting yourself back into good shape and not feel like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful and simple exercise. I think women also sometimes have trouble saying no, right? And maybe doing a lot of things for other people. And so even that practice, like you said, of saying no more often and choosing things more for their own pleasure and their happiness is a wonderful practice to start doing. I love that so much.
Yeah. And also, I think it's not, some women say, oh, I can't do that. I've got to do everything for everybody else. We're all famous at doing that, aren't we? We leave ourselves to last. But actually, if you look after yourself and you get back to feeling well again, then you can be there for everyone, much more so than if you're falling apart and you feel like curling up in a ball and you're not functioning very well, either in the workplace or at home or in the bedroom. All of those places, you've got demands on you that you can't really meet if you're feeling awful.
Yeah, absolutely. I just heard you mention the bedroom. Outside of, it sounds like this might be part of the answer, like taking care of yourself more, but are there other ways that a woman can gain her sex life back, and as her body and libido are changing so much from these, perimenopause to menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we did a survey, we've done loads of surveys, and the relationship survey showed that over 70% of women feel switched off below the waist, and very often have vaginal dryness, which makes penetration painful. They have no clue, because no one tells them, that they can get it all back again. And we've even done a survey on men where the men felt scared and frustrated and rejected, and no one wants to have the conversation because there's no hope out there. But once you understand that this is just a life stage, and all the women need is what I call a midlife refuel, where we can get everything back onto an optimum range, then the factory lights go back on again, that make the mucus in the vagina, that help the tissue be elasticy, that help you feel switched on from the waist downwards, and libido comes back again. So it all becomes exciting, because you can have even better sex than you had before, and hopefully you've got a little bit more time and leisure time and so on as you get older. And so it can be a really good time, a time when you can feel very close and in tune with your partner, because that's the glue that sticks us all together, isn't it? If you turn your back on that and pretend it's not happening because it feels too bad, either because it's sore and painful or because every time someone touches you, you get hot, then it will just send you further apart. And so it's very important. And I used to find, everything I do these days is virtual, so I don't see the men when I'm dealing with the women anymore. But when I had my clinic, people would come in, sometimes the partner would come as well. And when they went through the journey together, it was very empowering for both of them, so that they came out feeling like a good team, and that they'd achieved a great objective, and that the partner got back the person they fell in love with, and it was they were back in really good communication and harmony.
That's amazing. How could a woman approach a conversation like that with her partner?
Well, I've made lots of little films, actually. There's some on YouTube about how you talk to your partner, how your partner can support you, that obviously setting the scene. First of all, you have to have hope and understand that you are going to feel better. You have to be doing something about it, so that you know that in a finite period of time, you're going to be back to feeling well again. Even if you feel skeptical about it, you can watch films or meet other women who've been through that journey and really come to trust the fact that you can feel better. And then set the scene. So do your planning, bring up the conversation when maybe you're having dinner together, a quiet time, and just be willing to be vulnerable and explain that you're doing something and that it isn't it's not life-threatening, it's not going to last for the rest of your life. It's just a transient phase in your life when you need to have a refuel and maybe get some help and support. And what I've done in the little films, we've even done a download for men so that they can be supportive. But in the films, I'm asking them to, cook you dinner or give you a massage or do some random acts of kindness, bring you flowers, tell them that so that you still feel loved and valued, even though you're going through this, what can for some women be an absolute nightmare. Other women don't have symptoms, but for the majority of women, they have some symptoms, and some women feel absolutely terrible. So it is, different for each individual as you go through this phase in your life.
Wow, that sounds really important. I'm so far from that stage of my life personally, but I can only imagine if you're going through a lot of those symptoms and maybe even feeling like you said, not loved, not as beautiful, not in the same body, etc., and how powerful it can be to have your partner do those things, like do a little bit extra of the flowers, the cooking dinner, the massages, etc., to really help give you that extra love and attention during that time. I think that's a wonderful tip.
And also, I think if the men know that they're going to get the benefit at the end of the day, they're going to actually, the light's going to go back on in the bedroom and so on, then they will jump in and help for the most part. They want to help and be supportive and show that you're needed. That's definitely the feedback that we've got from men. And we even set up a Facebook group for men called Menopause, where men can come and meet each other and get some tips and help to be supportive and understand what's going on, because sometimes they just really, really don't understand. It feels like they're living with an alien and they're scared, and it's understandable.
What is the Facebook called again?
Menopause.
Menopause. Okay. Awesome. What are your thoughts on hormone replacement therapy versus this more natural approach that you take?
Well, we've never used hormone replacement therapy because we've never had to. And also it's not our way. We've always managed everything, whether it's PMS, period pains, postnatal depression, or whatever it is. We've managed it all with a non-drug approach based on published medical research. Some women prefer to choose HRT, and that's fine. And if they do take hormone replacement therapy, they have to understand it's not going to correct nutritional deficiencies, and it might work for them or it might not. So in our study on 1,100 women, looking at what their doctor offered them, we found that 42% of them were prescribed hormone replacement therapy. And of those, 14% didn't take it because they were too scared about the side effects. And of the ones who did take it, 61% of them came off because of adverse side effects in the first year. And so there wasn't really anything else given to them because the doctors didn't have any more knowledge about what to do next. And so they were left to fend for themselves. And then you've also got women who can't take HRT because they've got a history of breast cancer or blood clots or whatever it is in the family that preclude them from being a candidate for HRT. So in my opinion, every woman should have knowledge about everything that science shows works so she can make an informed choice. It's the obvious thing is to make dietary and lifestyle changes and see where you go. If you feel brilliant, then you won't need to take hormone replacement therapy. If you need to take it for a short amount of time, take it. What I would say is if you are taking hormone replacement therapy and listening to this and thinking to yourself, oh, I'd like to manage naturally, don't come off the HRT suddenly, because if you do, you can get terrible withdrawal symptoms. So what we do is we get people established on the non-drug approach, and then in conjunction with their doctor, we wean them off the HRT over a period of time so that they don't have the withdrawal symptoms and they don't notice. Because if you remember, I said the race between the different kinds of estrogen means that the mother nature's estradiol gets in there first, or phytoestrogen rather gets in there first. And therefore, it actually makes the HRT redundant. So when you come to wean off the HRT, you're not relying on it anymore anyway.
Okay. Do you think that, or does studies, research show that women are getting menopause earlier than they used to?
Women go through menopause around the same age as their mum. So it tends to, if your mum had an early menopause, then you're likely to. I think there's more knowledge now about perimenopause, because until the last 5 years or so, no one really knew what that term was. And so they didn't actually appreciate what was going on in their 40s was anything other than worse PMS, let's say. So now we know about perimenopause. I think that's maybe why you think people are going through menopause earlier. I don't know that there is any evidence to show that the world is going through menopause earlier. The average age is still 51, as far as I know. But everyone's individual. Some women have a surgical menopause in their 30s, for example. So there's never a one size fits all. And as I said, going through perimenopause can be easy, or it could be a nightmare in your 40s that needs to be addressed. But the earlier that you get started making changes, for example, our bone mass reaches its peak by the time we're 35. So we need to be doing something to help ourselves to create new bone cells, which we can. And otherwise you lose more bone than you're making over time. And when you get to menopause, you can lose 20% of your bone mass. And women literally can die after fracturing their hip. 20% of women who have a hip fracture don't recover. It's really scary. And the same for heart disease. We have less heart disease before menopause than men. After menopause, women are much more predisposed to heart disease and heart attacks. And over half of them die. Actually, half of them die from their first heart attack. But again, you can prevent it. So it's vitally important, from my perspective, to learn how to meet your needs so that you can keep yourself in good shape and extend your wellness years.
Would you say that weightlifting or certain exercises, or is it more nutrition supplemental side that's going to help prevent that osteoporosis, osteopenia from happening?
I think you have to do everything that science shows works. So it's having a good diet, making sure you've got all the nutrients you need, plenty of weight-bearing exercise. That's maybe not enough. If that's not enough, you can go to OsteoStrong, for example, where it's a bone loading system that helps to get your bone mass back into the levels it's supposed to be, depending on if you've got the problems. And I think the thing is, when you get to a certain age, it's really important to have a bone density scan and see where are you sitting. If your mum had osteoporosis, then you're more likely to get it because it runs in families. If you find that you have a bone density scan, you're perfectly fine. You can be you can be more kind of lenient with yourself than if you find you've got osteopenia, which is the beginning of the downward spiral in terms of bone loss. And then you need to do something to make new bone. And again, you can get the factory lights back on so that those new bone cells are being made. Before menopause, we make about 3% new bone every year and we lose about 3%. So we stay in even balance. But when you get to menopause, you start losing a lot more because your ovaries have retired. And that's when the danger comes. And it can get worse as you get older. And so you see some of these old ladies who are kind of bent over with what we call the dowager's hump. And, once you get to that stage, it becomes very difficult. But before then, you can do a lot to reverse the process. And there are supplements as well that have been through clinical trials that have been shown to improve bone mass. There are lots of things that you can do. In fact, in the book, there is a chapter on osteoporosis and how you can prevent it.
Okay, amazing. What advice would you offer to women who are currently struggling through perimenopause, getting to menopause, and they're having these symptoms? They're a little hesitant to seek natural remedies. How do they take the first steps towards improving their health and well-being during this time?
I think it depends on each individual person. I mean, obviously there's the book. They can read the book and get a lot of information and knowledge from that. We have a free midlife refuel club that people can come. It's absolutely stuffed full of self-help information. There's webinars in there. I've made about 100 little films on different aspects of every symptom you can think about that they can click on and watch. and just dip into it. That we have question and answer sessions as well that people can come to. And if they feel that they can't help themselves because they're feeling bowled over by their hormones, then they can consider coming on our 6-week course, and we'll always make time to talk to people. When they go on the course, they fill in a detailed questionnaire and diet diary. We tailor make a program for them. We take them through the program. They've got course materials, but they've also got help 24/7, as it were, to get through and get established. So they come out the other end feeling really like they've had a refuel and really good again.
Okay, great. We're going to do 5 more questions, like a speed round. Does that sound good to you?
That's fine.
Okay. Some of them, your answer does not have to necessarily be health-based on some of these. So kind of whatever comes to mind. Okay. What are 1 to 2 books that have been the most impactful to you?
Oh, heavens. So many books I've read. There's one by Dr. Lucia Capaccioni, which is about visioning the life of your dreams. That's one of my really favorite books. There are so many books. I think that depending on if you are talking about health books, there are health Bibles out there and all sorts of things that people can dip into. But I think that positivity is the key thing, and maybe even The Secret from years ago, manifesting your dreams. Because if you stop and stand outside the hell that's going on in your body and your world and think about the fact that if you can get yourself into good shape, you've then got a blank canvas and you can create the life that you've been dreaming about. And you don't have to be a sitting duck to all the other stuff that's going on in your life. And so I like to think that we can make use of our time on this planet and really put our wisdom to good use. So I think those kind of self-help books are the ones that attract me the most.
Oh, I love the manifesting books like The Secret. Okay, next question. What's one supplement you could never live without?
For me, I'd say it's magnesium. If I was on a desert island and I could only take one, I'd take magnesium, because that helps gut function as well as hormone function. And I find that's a really good way of keeping my gut muscles working properly and helping me sleep well. So that would be my favorite one.
Okay. What's the best purchase you've made in the past year for something that cost under $100?
Oh, I have to say it was, well, I don't know, there's hundreds of things. I would say it's hard to say, but the thing that jumped out at me straight away was my knitting projects, because I love knitting and creating things. And I've always got something on the go. So for me, that's a no-brainer, because it's good hand-eye coordination. It gives me something productive to do if I'm watching TV. If I'm in a meeting and I haven't got a speaking part, then I'm often found knitting. And I just find you can get lovely colored walls and nice patterns and things like that and be really creative. So that's my kind of go-to thing.
Very cool. Are you knitting anything right now? Specific?
I am. Well, I've just finished a baby blanket, but actually I'm knitting something colorful at the moment. So I always have something on the needles.
Very pretty. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Well, I live in Florida. I've got a view of the ocean, so I have to say I feel very lucky and blessed. I love Australia. I've spent a lot of time in Australia and I've got family and friends there. So that would probably be my next go-to place, but I'm very happy where I am at the moment. I love going back to London and seeing my family and friends, but I hate the weather there. And I just, I like it here.
Yeah, I miss Florida a lot for the beach sometimes. Okay, final question. If you could leave the listeners with one thing that they could start doing this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
I think the main thing is to have hope and come to the table and reevaluate your situation. You are not, you don't have to fall apart. And our survey on 1,100 women showed that 96% of them felt unprepared for menopause, and 2/3 of them felt robbed of life as they knew it. And it doesn't have to be that way. So find out how you want to manage this life phase. Do you want to self-help? Do you want extra help? Do you want to be supported in a community? Whatever it is, and then work out how to make that happen. And then once you've made that happen, then you can reevaluate what's going on in your life and determine what happens next, because we can be the mistress of our own destiny if we know that there are tools out there and experts out there that can help us to get there. So having hope in your heart and being proactive. It's not magic. It's not just because you read a book doesn't mean you're going to absorb the information and suddenly feel better. You have to be proactive and do something about it. But what we tend to do in the long term is help people to do the irreducible minimum to bring about the maximum effect. And that's the key thing.
Mm. And where can people find you if they want to work with you guys?
Just maryonstewart.com. So it's MaryonStewart.com. And the Midlife Refuel Club. They can book an appointment to have a consultation. They can buy the book, come attend one of our sessions, whatever they want and however they want to go through it. We've got a team of people that can help them to do that. And also you can meet other women who are going through the same journey, which sometimes is a great relief, because you feel in a sense that you're suffering on your own. Women aren't having conversations even with their friends about what goes on below the waist. And they do suffer in silence, and it doesn't have to be like that. You can laugh at it and get through it and come out the other end feeling fabulous.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Maryon. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I think probably very inspiring for some women out there.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.